The Atlanta Hawks did something that I don't believe I've ever seen done before, and that's quite possibly the quickest rebuild that I think I've ever seen. Think about it this way, the 2014 to 2015 Atlanta Hawks made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, although they would get swept by the LeBron James-led Cavs, and featured the likes of Paul Millsap, Kyle Korver, Al Horford, and Dennis Schroeder leading the way. They also happen to have the current Philadelphia 76ers general manager Elton Brand on the roster, and Kent Bazemore. And ironically, they were led by Mike Budenholzer, the head coach of the team that just knocked them out. But what they were able to do in the years following this is something that you don't typically see. A team being able to rebuild this quickly and make it back to the Eastern Conference Finals in just 5 years. This is a team that only missed the playoffs for 3 years during that rebuild. That's remarkable. But what ownership is currently saying about the Atlanta Hawks may scare you guys. So what's going on, guys? Your boy Mike here. Real quick before we get to the content, I just wanted to let you guys know we're giving away a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel. If you could also take a moment to smack that like button for the YouTube algorithm, it will really help us out a lot. And we're going to also announce the winner of the giveaway in the beginning of August on my community tab. Now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mike check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? So this is actually a fairly old article, at least by my standards. This came out a week ago on July 6th, but unfortunately I was in a country that only provided me with dial-up internet, which is why I didn't upload last week, and as a result I haven't been able to get this to you guys until now. Now the source of this is Chris Kirschner of The Athletic. You guys already know how I feel about The Athletic, and the title of the article is Hawks owner Tony Ressler on keeping young talent, the luxury tax, and title aspirations, we are not satisfied. So this is one of those instances where the title of the article doesn't really explain the entirety of the article. Over the past 3 years, the Atlanta Hawks have done a masterful job at rebuilding their entire roster, including a bold move where they decided to trade Luka Doncic during draft day for Trae Young, which is by far one of the most even trades in NBA history, might I add. And I often ponder what would have happened if Luka got this team, because this is a perfect team to run 5-out offenses with, especially with Luka Doncic's skill set. Plenty of catch and shoot guards that could easily hit threes, but I digress. After an offseason where they drafted Onyeka Okongwu, then were able to acquire players like Bogdan Bogdanovic and Danilo Gallinari, the Atlanta Hawks were able to make a push to the Eastern Conference Finals, which was shocking considering the fact that they fired their head coach in the middle of the season. This was a team that came into the NBA season with a disgruntled John Collins that was really trying to force his way out. As a matter of fact, the Atlanta Hawks even said that they were willing to move on from John Collins in return for a lottery pick in the NBA draft, but ultimately they weren't able to get what they wanted for John Collins, so he remained on the team, and the rest was history. Winning, I suppose, cures everything, and as a result, the Atlanta Hawks made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, which is substantial. Once again, it's really hard to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, let alone twice under 2 different regimes. This is while Trae Young is still playing under a rookie scale contract, and as a result, the Atlanta Hawks have a fairly complicated situation at their hands. Although a fairly nice one, if I could say so myself. The Hawks remind me of a mixture of 2 teams. The early OKC Thunder that featured James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka, and Kevin Durant, and the Golden State Warriors. Their rise is mimicking the Golden State Warriors in my opinion. I just see this team getting better and better, whereas the decisions they have to make remind me of the OKC Thunder. One of these players, according to the owner of the Atlanta Hawks, is probably going to have to go. So before we dive into the salary cap situation, let me get you the direct quote as to why we're even making this video. So we also cover this on the Laced Up podcast, guys, so if you want to hear Korzemba's and get like Coop's opinion on this, I'm going to leave a link to that in the end screen. Here's what the owner of the Atlanta Hawks, Tony Ressler, said about the roster situation. saying that it's complicated, of course, because what we're trying to convince people is that we're building something. But let's not kid ourselves. Our job is to run a good business. What we are trying to achieve is literally keeping our best players. As you could imagine, trying to make clear that we're going to have to spend a lot more than we have this season, we fully expect that. I'm not sure we're going to be able to keep every single player that we want to keep, which is pretty substantial to say. Bear in mind, this is a smaller market team, made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and is now saying that we probably won't be able to keep everyone as a result of that. Now, he continues to say that pretty good assumption that we will not, but I do think we have several years that we should be able to build some real stability. If the question is, are we scared of the tax? Are we scared of going into the tax? I'm scared of paying the tax and not being a good team. Yes, that I'm scared of. But if we have to go into the tax to be a great team for a period of time, so be it. So really interesting, because I believe the first part typically gets taken out of context, which is why I like giving you the whole quote and then diving into the analysis. But what I'm getting from Tony Ressler is once a team goes into the luxury tax, they are no longer necessarily a good business, especially if it's a team that typically doesn't experience a lot of success in years past. Most ownership groups are willing to pay that luxury tax to get a couple of championships that typically increases fan interest in the team, thus making them more profitable for years to come, even after they're completely relevant. And my assumption is Tony Ressler is sweating the fact that he might have to pay the luxury tax because, like any business investment, it could go wrong. Now, looking at the Atlanta Hawks salary cap situation, you can see that they currently owe a significant amount of money to Danilo Gallinari, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Clint Capella. They're going to have to pay Trae Young and Kevin Huerter next year. Lou Williams and John Collins' contract expires at the end of this year. If I were to guess what's going to have to happen, a lot of gymnastics are going to be underway because you have multiple players like DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish and Onyeka Okongwu that are fairly young players that are still developing. Then you have older players that are ready to contend now, like Bogdan Bogdanovic, Clint Capella, Danilo Gallinari, and of course you have the mix of the both. You have Trae Young, who is really good right now, and in my opinion, still hasn't scratched the surface of his potential, which is terrifying. My estimate is they probably will have to at some point trade either Bogdan Bogdanovic or Danilo Gallinari, and that is probably going to happen when Cam Reddish shows that he is developed and ready to take a larger role. I really liked what I saw from Cam Reddish in the Atlanta Hawks final playoff game. He really took over and showed what he was capable of doing. But you factor in the fact that they're going to have to eventually pay players like Kevin Huerter, they're going to have to pay John Collins, Cam Reddish, and of course they have to make decisions on Lou Williams and Tony Snell, and it makes a lot of sense why the Atlanta Hawks owner would say this. I don't think this necessarily means that they're going to move on from any substantial players that were integral to their success this year, but I do believe that in a year or so, you could potentially say goodbye to either Gallinari or Bogdanovic, or if somehow, some way, I don't really see this happening, but if Onyeka Okongwu really develops quicker than we're expecting him to, because of course he's 20 years old, he's deemed to be a little bit of a project, and he's a little undersized for a center in my opinion, maybe you could see him take over for Clint Capella's role, and maybe the Hawks will move on from Capella, but I just don't see it. So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. If you're a Hawks fan, how do you feel about these remarks that the owner made about the Atlanta Hawks? Do you think it's being twisted out of context, or do you think there's something more to it? I'd like to hear what you have to say in the comment section down below. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.